Hello and welcome to Keyfactor. We'll be sharing how they use 6sense and Bombora for account prioritization. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. We are going to try to keep this very conversational. So if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A tab and we'll try to answer them along the way, or we'll get to it at the end of the presentation. Also, we are recording this webinar and we'll be sending the on-demand link afterward. So let's dive right in. I'm Marissa Bialik. I'm Bombora's Demand Marketing Manager, and I'll be your webinar host today. With me, I have Kelly Webb from Keyfactor. Want to introduce yourself, Kelly?
Of course. Thank you, Marissa and the Bombora team for inviting me on today's webinar. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Webb, Director of Global Marketing Programs, where I drive demand through orchestrated campaigns. So both from a volume velocity, and an account-based perspective. For you that maybe don't know who Keyfactor is, Keyfactor is the global leader in machine and IoT identity management solutions. But more simply put, we're a B2B cybersecurity SaaS company.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're excited to have you here today.
Thanks,
For our agenda, we'll start with a quick introduction to Bombora for those of you who aren't familiar with us. Then I'll pass things off to Kelly to dive into how Keyfactor uses Bombora and 6sense for account prioritization, the results they've seen, as well as some key takeaways. And finally, we'll open up for Q&A. So for anyone who is not familiar with us, Bombora is the leading provider of intent data with our company Surge intent data. It tells you which businesses are researching the products and services that you and your competitors sell. And this is how Bombora helps marketing and sales leaders prioritize their resources to generate more leads, pipeline, and opportunities. And we do this by understanding the usual content consumption patterns of a business against an intent topic in our taxonomy. Next slide, please. So these intent topics are related to B2B companies, products, solutions, or trends. And we then identify when companies are consuming these topics more than they normally do, which is what we call company surge. So to sum it up, it's a buying intent signal that indicates when a company may be in market for a particular B2B product or service, as well as the intensity of that interest. So with that, I'm going to pass things off to Kelly to tell us how Keyfactor uses intent data.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa.
Yeah.
Super excited to be here again. Thanks for having me. I thought it would be best to start by laying the foundation on what Keyfactor's account-based strategy looks like. And just remember, Rome wasn't built overnight, right? So very similar to Keyfactor's ABX strategy, we really have taken strides to get where we are at today. So I would like to start with the core. The core of our program truly does root from the key ingredients of our integrated ABM function. So this is where we lean on our sales force. So think AEs, SDRs, our channel team, revenue operations, and of course, marketing. So field and our ABM leaders. So having that buy-in from these core functions of the business has really gave us the opportunity to launch those strategic account-based programs. So deriving from the ABM function, having cross-functional alignment into your priority accounts, so think messaging, persona work, having that clear ownership, the whole like say-do mentality, right? Who has the monkey? And then aligning weekly as a unit to discuss, hey, SDRs, what accounts are you going after for this specific patch? Really abiding by process has really pulled together our account-based strategy in regards to that team alignment. Then we go into utilizing and trusting the volume of data, right? So we're here with Bombora today. We use Bombora along with 6sense. So understanding that we have that abundance of buying signals, right? So we have the ability to broaden our reach with many more engagement channels than ever. So think SalesLoft, HubSpot, Sendoso, just to name a few. And then we're able to create enhancements through that targeted behavior that we're seeing in 6sense or Bombora. and then being able to have the ability to scale and accelerate our ABM program. So the whole goal is to deliver that personalized experience to the right customers at the right time. So with the visibility into the buyer's journey, we have the ability to create programs, right? And execute a data-driven approach targeting those strategic accounts through that personalized orchestration. So to the right, I put some examples of recent programs we've launched. So how do we marry campaigns and programs based on that account behavior? So we've hosted virtual field activities, right? So think executive business buying dinners, think of roundtables. We create hyper-targeted competitive campaigns through programmatic ads. And we have that highly curated landing page speaking to that buying behavior stemming from that specific ad. We're able to then leverage budget effectively through that direct mailer trigger send through Sendoso. So within this mix, these are what we call our high profile programs that have been pivotal to advancing our ABX program here at Keyfactor.
That's great. Quick question for you, Kelly.
Sure.
Do each of the integrated ABM functions all use the same technology that's listed here, or are certain of those tools reserved for certain functions?
Yeah, so that's a great question. As far as the 6sense data in Bombora, that is constantly streaming into our Salesforce instance where both the SDRs, the AEs, the channel team all really use as their nucleus to go to market, right? They're outbounding. HubSpot traditionally is going to be more for the marketing team. And we actually just launched Sendoso this week, actually. And that has been really a key driver for both the marketing and the SDR function. Great question.
Okay, great. That is helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I really wanted to share, and I do find value sharing the joint go-to-market strategy, right? So the traditional volume velocity that everyone, has been running from a marketing department since the 90s, right? And then we have this kind of the unique unicorn of account-based, right? Everyone needs to be doing account-based. But truly here at Keyfactor, we do have that double funnel. So I know a lot of organizations maybe are just doing volume velocity and they're tapping into ABX or completely have gone straight to ABX. But truly here at Keyfactor, we do both because we have found that there is a common denominator. No matter the go-to-market program strategy, the root of account prioritization for our programs really does start with that intent data from Bombora and 6sense. So how do we prioritize our audience? It doesn't matter what program we run. We just have to make sure that we're responding to what our target audience's behavior is at that point of time. So like I mentioned before, we leverage 6sense and Bombora. Within 6sense, you have the ability to get a certain subsense of Bombora topics. We've actually upgraded a little bit more with Bombora, and we purchased the 21 topics into addition what 6sense has to offer to give us more visibility and more intent data to then fuel our sales force. So then jumping into how does Keyfactor leverage Bombora intent data? And let's specifically talk about the ABX strategy. So on the screen, I've listed 3 main use cases. And as I mentioned earlier, Bombora is that input, right? Or a component of our 6sense predictive model, right? So the predictive model is tracking web activity, they're looking at branded and non-branded keywords in conjunction to all of that data that they're pulling in from our target accounts. We also then have 21 Bombora topics or clusters that are our priority to our business. Last quarter, we had the ability to create what we're calling surging segments within 6sense. And what those are they're clusters of like product categories or themes that tracked keywords, that website behavior and Bombora topics. We then have the ability to then get super hyper focused on that programmatic advertising. So think of it if we had a competitive campaign and we had, we had a competitive Bombora surge bucket that actually is established, and we've actually had Bombora create it for us. Then we also have the ability to track competitor-like terms And then we have, you know, our URLs that we also track that show our behavior of, hey, maybe this specific account could be interested in a like or similar product. So we have the ability then to create specific landing pages and specific content that is through ad copy and emails to then push out to these specific targets. And the cool part about this is, again, it's very programmatic, right? So leveraging 6sense and leveraging their display ads and that specific native, the native advertisement has been critical. And then the third is marketing is not the only department. So Marissa, kind of going off of your question you asked me a couple of slides ago, marketing is not the only department leveraging Bombora. Our sales force, particularly the SDR team, leverages Bombora topics. And they use it to assist in messaging with determining any type of persona targets as well.
Awesome.
Cool. So let's go ahead and talk about what we do with the abundance of data, right? So we have this abundance of data that we talk about, all this intent, all these signals. How do we then have the ability to drive into our prospect's journey and to have easily digest our prospects' buying behavior? So at Keyfactor, we've mapped out what we call, I like to call the North Star of our ABX program. And it's this pyramid of account prioritization. So think of it starting at the bottom and going up, it's a reverse funnel. So starting at the bottom, that's take in consideration one region, all the enterprise accounts available to that specific region, right? Say there's 200 accounts. So within the 200 accounts, we're always monitoring for activity. Those accounts are based on a TAM analysis, right? So if those accounts are not showing, you know, intent signals, we then have our volume velocity marketing programs supporting those accounts, right? So that's kind of the base of the pyramid. Then heading up north, we have our programmatic accounts. So what does that mean? So these accounts are selected and prioritized by intent-driven data, right? So that's coming from Bombora or 6sense. This is our one-to-many approach that we have here, where marketing has these evergreen programmatic streams that we've created to activate those theme-based clusters I was speaking on earlier based on that account behavior. So typically, I would say the owners of this specific function is going to be our ABX and our field marketing team. So think webinars, think, like I said, these programmatic display ads from an ABM perspective. So heading a little bit up more north to step closer to the top, we have our in-market accounts. So these are accounts that have been identified manually from the SDRs based on profile fit and that intent. So this is our what I like to call our true one-to-few approach, where we have curated messaging with that high value offering, and then this is where we really start having that cross-functional ownership that has been activated. So this is where our AE steps in. This is where we bring in our channel team. And this is where we're truly aligning on what accounts we're going after in that specific time frame. Okay, so we've identified an amount of accounts. Who from our team, what resources can we pile in a short time frame to go after those accounts based on that intent behavior that we're seeing within our platforms. And then super north, we are at the top, right? And this is what we have our strategic accounts. So these are static, right? They're nominated by our AEs. And these are our true one-to-one approach that we have. So this is, an extensive account mapping, extensive research, always on communication. So take a side of intent that we've been talking about this entire time. I don't care if they're in market or not. We know they have a need. We know that they're the whale of that territory. We're always going to be going after them. And this also too will be pushing any type of high value programs and offers to really dominate these accounts. So going back to my initial slide of, hey, what are these high value programs? Think of, the wine and cheese event. Think of these more white glove exclusive activities that we offer this buying group. And again, that's really then driven and owned by the AEs. And then from an ownership perspective, the remainder of the team, as far as, the SDR, marketing and channel, then support that initiative. So what we've seen here is really having that defined criteria of how we allocate our sales force and our resources has given us the ability to then select the best accounts based on the best data available, target our priority accounts at the best time, and create the best messaging then to support our programs. It truly has paid dividends into our marketing pipeline number.
It's just really helpful, this visualization. Now, I assume that this took some trial and error to figure out. So how long did it take your team to figure out this prioritization model, as well as a strategy that works for you?
Yeah, that's awesome question. So, I mean, we launched, I would say, a more defined, mature account-based strategy about a year ago, actually a year ago this month. But I would say it was a work in progress. We did it more on a micro scale. We had a subset of territories that we focused with. It was more of a manual effort. It did start with actually Bombora. We used Bombora before we used 6sense. So it derived from that intent, but we did it on small sprints versus that always on kind of go-to-market strategy where it's at today. If you were to ask one of our BDR, SDR, reps, they would say, yeah, like 6sense is our nucleus of how we go to market. Our weekly touch points is really how I procure my outbound strategy for the week. And it's really all deriving from the intent signals that we're seeing from both of these two strong platforms.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's dive into what programs then support that pyramid of account prioritization that we just looked at. So we have the ability to now prioritize accounts, right? We can then prioritize our marketing efforts. So we, probably spend more money once we start hitting the top. We have a wider net at the bottom. So that's more of our programmatic efforts. That also helps us scale the level of personalization, right? So anything from one to many or more of our volume velocity is going to be more of a broad outreach, right? You're talking more high level, top of funnel. But when you start getting down to the higher up and you're seeing the one to few, one to many, that's when we get industry specific. That's when we're really starting to talk about case studies and how we relate to that specific industry or function. So levels of personalization. And then also the distribution of budget, like I just mentioned, really like leveraging Sendoso at certain stages of the funnel, leveraging ads, the abundance of ads, the abundance of offerings. So just a few, I did name and put some screenshots of efforts that we've done over the past 6 months, but I did want to call out a few. The relevance, kind of the always on ad campaign by buying stage. That's our evergreen engine. It's solely fueled on our intent data. So it's had the ability to not just enhance, but kind of like, reconfigure our evergreen display advertisement engine. So going back to our custom segments in 6sense and really reacting to that cluster engagement by topic or theme, we're able to then, really understand, okay, if we see a subset of accounts that are showing this behavior, we're going to serve them this cluster of ads throughout the buying stage. And we have 5 different offerings at any given time. We also have the ability to capitalize on our middle of the funnel behavior. So that's all really driven by our retargeting display efforts and campaigns. So pushing bottom of the funnel, looking at, request a demo, buyer's guides, case studies. How do we react to that behavior that we're seeing at the top of like the one to many? And how do we serve them more deeper down in the funnel content through these different types of content? And then we have that highly created and that personalized content marketing experience. So that's that landing page, the gifting, the drift video, the field experiences. So, we have a target account, we see a specific, buying group really starting to engage. That's when that personalization kind of, kicks in. We kind of start high, we see who's going to bite from that specific target account, and then we release more of that personalized approach. That has been really critical for us to be able to scale the program. And then truly, but not least, it's really that highly personalized timing. and that relevant SDR outreach. Our SDR team is our core function to the strategy, as shared earlier on the slide with the ABM functions. So just being able to enhance their outreach efforts to then mirror behavior has yield return. Just looking at pipeline and what's in pipeline, I would say majority of our accounts are 6 QAs, right? They're accounts that are showing that intent. And we're, of course, reacting to that behavior, serving like content and pushing them down the funnel for our sales team.
So quick question.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're really making use of all of the intent data in a lot of different ways. Can you tell us about the results that you've seen from these different efforts?
Yes, and I think it's perfect segue. And I jumped a little ahead of you, so I think I have something for you.
No problem.
Yeah, so looking at results, when you talk metrics, results, did we drive pipeline? Is this working? For ABM, I really like to analyze it by both a pipeline and people metric perspective, and just kind of high level metrics to the left here. Since we've launched it over a year ago, and this is actually 2020 to 2021, 86% of increased pipeline creation was derived from the ABM program. And within that subset of pipeline, 93% of pipeline has been influenced by a 6sense display ad. And actually this case now would be even like a Sendoso send, right? So any kind of influence of a ABX marketing activity would result into that number shown. And then here at Keyfactor, we have our inbound and outbound pipeline. As far as the outbound pipeline goes, it's impacted in the marketing number, but it's solely pushed by the SDR. But as far as the SDR being kind of the leader of our strategy here, 65% of that outbound pipeline was influenced by an ABX program. So these were really great metrics right off the gate. Looking at what it came from Q4 and Q1 of this year already, I would say we're at, I believe, around 71%. But I would say the maturity of our ABX program is really looking at that one-to-one. When we initially launched, we were really, we started, walk, crawl, run, crawl, walk, run. We wanted to make sure that we started with the accounts in market. So we really excelled with our kind of one to few approach. But for this year, we're really focused on that one-to-one. So getting those, Fortune 500 companies, top 10 companies into the pipeline. So that's our metrics. And then to the right, we look at the people, right? So people are, our core here with this strategy. 100% sales adoption, which is amazing. That is for our North America region. EMEA, different market, a different approach that we're still trying to gain that adoption today. But as far as our North America region, I can confidently say we have 100% sales, SDR, and channel adoption. So that's huge. That's huge for the organization. It's huge for marketing. It's very impressive. And then also 84% increased productivity from a SDR, right? So that just basically shows that we're going after, we're telling our resources, our main resources, the voice of our company, the SDRs, to focus their time in the right places. That is yielding a return. So that Marissa is our key results that we drove from the initial campaign.
Yeah, these are great results. I like that you look at both the pipeline and the people metrics. I think it's important to look at both because without people in marketing and sales, none of this is going to happen. It really does take a village. So Kelly, what would you say are the 3 biggest takeaways that you've learned from using intent data that you want the audience to walk away with today?
Yeah, I think that's great to wrap up the session with that. I mean, truly it's believe in your strategy, right? Trust the data, continue prioritizing the accounts based on that best information available. Within that information, go after the best personas based on that best information available, and just craft that outreach, right? It's not gonna come out for A+ the first time around, but keep on refining the message, personalize that message based on what you're seeing in market. From a team alignment perspective, there's no I in team, so cross-functional alignment and collaboration is core. So Marissa, like you said, it takes a village. It very much so does. It's not Kelly Webb in the corner at Keyfactor trying to run this. I mean, it's our whole go-to-market strategy, and it's our whole go-to-market resources. So again, collaboration, get with your leaders, get with your AVPs, get with your head of sales, get that adoption from the top down. And then your voice will definitely be heard within the organization. And then last but not least, process. I mean, Keyfactor is huge on process, like live and breathe it, but just aligning on it and ingraining your sales team and your SDR to follow the process. If process doesn't exist, then the team is not going to have the ability to align on those accounts, and we're not going to be able to understand what the Texas group or the Plains team is going after. We won't have any visibility into the campaigns we should be running against those accounts. So understanding, what that process is, abiding by process, having even metrics and hygiene around making sure the process is followed has really been one area where we're able to ultimately scale the program.
That's perfect. Thank you, Kelly. I know I loved hearing how you're using intent data, and I hope our audience did as well. So thank you for sharing Keyfactor's story with us. Now I know we're almost up on time, so we're going to open it up for Q&A. I see a lot of questions in the queue already. We might not be able to get through all of them, but we will follow up afterwards if we don't get to answer yours live. So let's get into it. The first question we have here, which I think you touched on a little bit earlier, but can you speak to what type of activities you used to implement this program within Keyfactor? More specifically, what did you do for sales enablement to ensure the SDRs, AEs, et cetera, understood how to best use the insights from 6sense and Bombora? And Kelly, I think this is a question that a lot of people have, is how do you take that data and make it actionable for the sales team or the SDR team?
I don't think I can thank the revenue operations team enough. I mean, truly, it starts with them. We have a kick-ass revenue operations team that truly has been able to understand what data points are actionable for the SDRs and how is that, because there's tons of data, right? We can go for hours and map and have reports after reports, but what is actually going to move that needle? So we have really robust dashboards. We have really robust prioritization reports individually for each territory. Then they have the ability to filter by their name and understand, okay, like what's my SLA around these priority accounts, and how do I make sure I have the buying group, the Keyfactor buying group, all aligned going after those accounts. So when I kind of mentioned SLA, it's true. We have SLAs around accounts in market in different buying stages. So that has been a huge win for us. But as far as sales enablement goes, we're lucky here at Keyfactor. We do have someone that runs sales enablement, which I partner really close with, and we have an amazing SDR leader. So just having 6sense has a lot of great like value cards and different mechanisms that we then coach our SDRs on. What specific data to focus on at what times. You're getting abundance of it. How do you prioritize? What's going to move that needle? It's all about refining. It's all about what's the adoption look like with your SDRs. And I would just say start small. Start with maybe your most successful SDRs or most successful territory. Get that oil kind of well-oiled machine running, and then be able to then implement it to other regions.
That's a great point. You don't have to dive in fully all the way to get started. Start small and work your way up as you guys see success. And it's a really good point. The next question we have is, does your ABX program cover only programmatic advertising, or did you also utilize targeted email campaigns influenced by intent on prospects?
Yes. So we do programmatic, we do emails, constant syndication, events, we kind of do it all. Like I said, it's the nucleus to all of our programs that we run. From a programmatic perspective, I would say it's the native ads, and then absolutely we leverage LinkedIn as well.
Okay. And what are the key roles that you need to have in place to effectively run your strategy? I think you kind of touched on this in the previous question.
Yeah, I mean, as far as roles go, I mean, I couldn't have done it without our RevOps team. So I would say our RevOps team is to make sure you have buy-in from not just marketing. 6sense, Bombora, when you invest, it's investing within the whole of your whole organization. So having that buy-in from the RevOps leader, making, this is not an easy task, right? It's going to take a lot of time to implement and get all your reports up and running, and even the model up and running, right? And then having that, like I said, buy-in from the top down from sales and all your AVPs, right? So whoever your sales team and your SDRs report to, you need to be their best friends and make sure you get buy-in. And so that, I would say those are the key roles.
Yeah, related to that buy-in aspect, what did that look like specific to the SDR organization and getting buy-in? How did your team finding that alignment with?
Yeah, so I think for Keyfactor, it was more of training. The adoption, I think, was there. It was more just refining, having office hours, making sure that, out of nature, SDRs are more of like an entry level, green type of role. So just making sure that you had the ability and time to train and have the ability to have those office hours, leverage 6sense, leverage Bombora resources, and just listen to your SDRs. Where's the confusion? Where can you help? Because if they're not using the data, your investment isn't going to go far, right? Your investment is not just going to be programmatic display ads. Like, that's great, but it's a billboard to some degree. Like, you need your SDR engine, you need that outbound stroke going into those accounts simultaneously in order for it to work.
Absolutely. I know we're over time, so just one more question. If you were to start over, would you prioritize starting with Bombora or starting with 6sense instead?
So I think that's a great question. 6sense is a lot. 6sense is great. I think I would maybe start with Bombora initially to make sure you get full buy-in, because it is kind of the easier on the budget initially, right? And then with the predictive model, it's a bigger investment. You have to RevOps. It's a bigger. It's definitely a bigger project. I would start with Bombora, but I would also make sure that you align really closely with your Bombora rep to make sure that you have your clusters, your topics correct, and you have predefined avenues or programs. How are you going to react to that data, right? So it depends on, I think it also depends on your industry, because with Bombora, it's only specific clusters, whereas 6sense, you have a little bit more data. So it depends on budget, depends on what programs, what resources you have, because if you have 6sense, you have all this data, but you don't have adoption, you don't have budget, and you don't have programs to run against it, like, you're probably not going to get the ROI you want to see.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point, that it honestly depends on your organization. It depends on what your team is like, the resources you have internally, the resources you have in your tech stack, to really determine where you should start, how to begin, should you start small? Can you start medium? Everything's going to vary company to company there, but great answer. Great questions. That is all we have time for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Big thank you to you, Kelly, for speaking about this, and have a great day, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.